Jared Waitley, Justin Lepich, Kane Corns, and this is Sam Edmonds stuff here. Sam set the concept up for us.
Well, Jared, I just hope the washing machine actually does spin to some degree, because everything you hear from list managers, clubs, player managers, they're all saying the same thing at the moment, and it is at the moment. It's as quiet at this stage as they've ever seen. It's certainly not a seller's market, and players who want out or are struggling at least to get the contract they want at their existing clubs are having a really hard time establishing rival bidders to pressure their existing clubs. So it's a good time, in fact, if you're a club with players out of contract and you're driving a hard bargain. Only a few clubs have got money. The TPP has shrunk. We know all that. So we know that. We hope they're wrong, Jared. We hope we get some real bombs come the trade period this year. So
the most critical part of doing the washing is organising how you're going to do it. All baskets lined up. What are your categories?
Well, you just have those days, especially this time of year, where you need to put it on the heavy-duty cycle. This is where you got the big stuff that needs to be washed, Jared. And Adam Chera certainly is a heavy-duty item. So far, given we think Luke Parker more likely stays, he is the biggest fish on the market as we sit here right now. So 22 in October, number 5 draft pick with 4 seasons under the belt and a very good user of the ball. Now, so many clubs have been contacted asking the question, which gets back to how we preface this conversation. Are you interested in Adam Chera to try to drive up the competition? But his management are chasing, obviously, the best deal, but they're also chasing the best fit. And this is where Carlton is in the box seat for both criteria. Pick 6 has to be involved at a minimum. The Dockers certainly don't want the Blues to try and split that pick. And then what else is involved? At this point, more likely to be pick swaps and futures, given Sam Petrevski-Seton, Lockie O'Brien and the like. There's no indication Fremantle will have an interest there, and they're not exactly banging down the door to leave Carlton either. So at the moment, Adam Chera is in the heavy-duty basket.
Kane, is he good for Carlton?
Yeah, what's a draft pick worth to me? And particularly now that is it a risk not having seen these players play? So you've always got the one or two up the top that, you know, Dacos and Jason Horn are obviously going to be very good players. But then after that, I spoke to Kao Toomey from AFL.com on the Captain's Run yesterday. Sam Darcy's played 10 games in 2 years. So it's really difficult for recruiters. So if you're going to trade a top 10 draft pick, probably the time to do that is now for a known commodity. So pick 6 for Chera, if that's it for Carlton, seems like a win for Carlton to me, with the uncertainty that recruiters are facing, just not having seen footy. I mean, some players are going to be picked that the recruiters haven't seen play live. How long's that happened? So if I was ever going to trade a really valuable draft pick, I'd do it this year.
Yeah, so on that same premise, that means some late picks might be good value, won't
Exactly.
it? This year it's going to be the other way around, so the draft could battle a lot deeper. It's maybe a goodie not to have as many top picks and have some little things out the back.
Is there room for a swooper here with the indecision at Carlton likely to last between 30 and 45 days?
I think so. There's no obvious candidate at this point in time, and his management have struggled to establish a firm, keen rival for Carlton. I mean, all signs still point to Carlton, but for sure, absolutely uncertainty would help the situation there for a rival to swoop. Now, there's plenty, when it comes to heavy duty, plenty of stains that Sydney have got to sort out at the moment. Some real long-lasting stuff as well. Now, to be overplaying it to describe the Swans as Collingwood 2.0, but they are under enormous salary cap pressure. So Luke Parker, Dylan Stevens, Jordan Dawson, Sam Reid, and a few others are all trying to be re-signed. Lance Franklin's money can't be moved under restricted free agency rules. So at the moment, player managers, list managers are saying the Swans are really battling to shuffle the deck chairs here and make the pieces fit. So Parker's chasing $700,000 a year for 4 years. He's 28 years of age. Dylan Stevens is curious. His number 5 draft pick only 2 years ago. Plenty of clubs have been asked if they're interested. He has a deal on the table from the Swans, but it hasn't had him doing cartwheels. Jordan Dawson has publicly said he really wants to stay, but that was 4, 5, 6 months ago. That hasn't happened. And then there's George Hewitt is the one most likely to leave out of all of them, given the Swans have just shown no inclination whatsoever at this point to start talks on a new contract with him. Now, that could change. He is a restricted free agent, but at the moment, everything points to him making way as part of this squeeze.
So it's pivotal for them, isn't it? So we've loved what Sydney have done, but all of a sudden, if you lose Parker and Dawson, there's number 1 and number 3 in your best and fairest, and you lose another. They haven't had a heap of top 10 draft picks in the past. Dylan Stevens, you lose another one there. So this Buddy Franklin deal, which we all think is a success with the way they is it finally going to really come back to hurt them, Sam?
Well, they're at such an interesting juncture, Jared, and we've spoken about this all because we loved what we've seen, the blend of old and new, and they're just making some real progress, and now they've got this massive hurdle from a list management perspective to even give themselves the best chance in the next 2 to 3 years. They've got to get through this.
Yes,
Like
the
for
progression's
Luke-
not linear if you lose a set of players now.
Yeah, sorry. For Luke Parker, for example, he's probably played on unders. I don't know what he's got paid, Sam, but he's probably been a $500,000 player when he's easily better than that. Like, you look at his resume now. He's a premiership. He's an All-Australian. He's a 3-time. He plays football the right way. Doesn't he? He's a good character. He's absolutely right to demand $700,000 for 4 years with what he's done in the game. But it's going to be pivotal. So what does he do? Does he go for an extra couple of years to somewhere else and leave Sydney? I don't know. They're going to be the club that I'm most interested in this trade period.
Then you got the delicates, Jared, the ones that you put in there, that you've really got to put on the gentle cycle, and there's a few items here. So Hawthorn, certainly plenty of whispers around Tom Mitchell, at least being open to a trade. Jack Gunston, my understanding is, even though there's been whispers in this space as well, is more inclined to stay than Tom. Do they reset under Sam Mitchell aggressively? Hawthorn want to keep both, is my understanding, on the assumption that, as we said earlier, that big offer is it just doesn't come this year, but there's no guarantees. Then there's North Melbourne, who made 15 list changes last year, the most of any side. They're on the fast track to rebuilding this list for David Noble. So it's made for some interesting negotiations with their elder statesmen. So Robbie Tarrant wants 2 years. He's only been given 1. Jack Ziebel wants 2 years. He's only been given 1. Aaron Hall wanted 2 years after turning his career around. He had to settle for 1. Sean Atley, he's been told to wait. Tom Campbell the same. Trent Dumont hasn't signed. He's an unrestricted free agent, and he's in the shop window. He was dropped from the club's leadership group. Essendon's had a sniff here before. He has links to Port Adelaide. Tom Rockcliffe is gone. Does he fit in there? So North Melbourne as well, because they're on the fast track. What do? We know they've got the number 1 pick, but they've got some pillars of that side that have been there for so long, and now how do they gently make it all work? Because you want to keep them around, but you want to keep them around at your price.
The Hawthorn side of things there, Kane, the Tom Mitchell scenario is really interesting for player and club.
I would want to get as many. We just spoke about picks being maybe a fool's gold a little bit this year, but I just think that there comes a time where you've got to bunch these first round picks together and get as many as you can through the door, because there's a big gulf there from the way that Alistair Clarkson has gone about list management. So that would be my priority, but it can't be all young. So I think players like Bruce and Gunston and Mitchell are going to be really important for these young players. Sam Mitchell's going to want some success, and he's probably going to want to win 8 games next year. You can't do that if you do what North Melbourne did last off-season and get rid of 15 players. So there's a balance there, but absolutely the priority for me if I was Hawthorn is to go through the draft, which is what they've done last year and what they should do for the next couple of years.
And the other delicate item in the washing machine is the Geelong T-shirt, Jared. We know how old this T-shirt is, and they've got some young items there. Can they keep them? So can they convince them to stay again? I'm talking of Jordan Clark, Quinton Narkle, Charlie Constable as well, who have all canvassed the thought of leaving in the last 12 to 24 months. Can they be convinced to stay post this year? Will be interesting as well.
Any word on Guthrie there?
I think it gets done. He's managed by his dad, who's very hard to get a hold of, Guthrie Senior. So it's a curious setup, but I think he stays. It's just a matter of finding the right price.
How many people still get managed by their parents?
Yeah, not many.
It's a real 30 years ago type arrangement, that one. But,
Yep. No, that's that. I think he stays. Though. Then you got the soak, the ones that we're just going to have to wait for, Jared. You got to get them under the water, submerge them, and you've just got to be patient to work these ones out. There's a stack of Carlton players in this basket, given they don't have a coach at the moment. At the Western Bulldogs, Pat Lipinski's likely to leave, but he's had a 3-year deal on the table for some time. At the end of the day, he just wants to play. I don't think Carlton's in for him, though. Could it be Collingwood? Sydney have been linked, but we know the Swans cap issues as well. And then you got Mitch Wallace, who hasn't been able to get a look in as vice-captain. That's just an amazing fall from grace after last year. And Cody Waitman's probably come in and taken that spot, hasn't he? And then you got Sam Wiedemann, who's been monitored by a handful of clubs all year. Could be a case of Tom McDonald repeated here. He could stay. Melbourne could keep him, but it would be on reduced terms if that was to happen. Callum Coleman-Jones, quarter by Gold Coast. Again, this is a soak item, been going on for so long. He has had a 2-year deal on the table from Richmond for some time. Hasn't signed, so that one's dragging on. A bit the same for Mabior Chol, who was an unrestricted free agent, can walk whenever he wants. You got Daniel Talia possibly coming into Richmond. Luke Dunstan's looking for a new home. St Kilda won't re-sign him. And Mason Cox as well looking for a new home. Now, this will be interesting with Craig McRae getting the job. We know he's a big fan. They've got a lot of history together. It's said that he's unlikely to start Collingwood. He's changed management companies and there's been wheels put in motion there to get him a new home. There's no suitor just yet. So do Collingwood offer him a new contract given the coach coming in?
So in that soak cycle is Sam Wiedemann. What does he represent to your eye, Lepper?
I like Sam Wiedemann. I was actually at Brisbane when we did the draft that year, and I think Sam was a bunch of all that. That was a good tools draft where Hip would come out of it, and Shacky was an early pick, Wiedering was an early pick. McKay brothers were in that. So there was a lot of top 15 tools in that draft, which he was a part of, and he only, I think from memory, played the one game that year. So he had a lot of injuries even way back then. But the one game he played, he was electric. So as a young, when I was going through just the recruiting tapes, he was excellent. He just hasn't had a crack at it yet. He hasn't sort of been able to put the years together. But if you talk on just basic form for the age he is, he could be a really good player. It just hasn't been realised right now.
And we haven't been able to see it either, given the disruptions to the VFL clubs, just unsure.
Well, that's the other thing too. Yeah. There's so many disruptions to the VFL form, the under-18s, the salary cap now. So clubs have to make decisions maybe they don't want to make. So there's so many factors in this year that there hasn't been in other years.
Don't know about you, Jared, but I'm a big fan of the express wash, the 15-minute cycle. I just can't be buggered waiting for the 45 minutes. So these are the ones we think will get done sooner rather than later. Jacob Hopper at GWS, his season ended last night. Now, you can't say it's 100% yet. Everything does point to him staying on a new 2-year contract, but it's not locked in. But we think it happens sooner rather than later. Jack Billings is the same. Hasn't got the contract he would have absolutely wanted on the open market. So it's less money to stay at Moorabbin, but that's always been his preference. So it's 4 years and he's keen to stay. Braden Maynard, he was putting off extending given the uncertainty on the coach. Now that that's done, and Graham Wright did come out about this last week, his contract for next year, but he does want to stay. He just wanted the picture to become clearer there. Scott Pendlebury staying, of course, that will get done as well. So they're the ones that we think will happen sooner rather than later in the season.
I feel like if someone made a real rush at Billings, he's shakeable.
Yep, absolutely he is, but it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
It just hasn't happened. For the reasons that we mentioned, it's not a seller's market. The money's not there. And maybe Jack Billings, from a couple of years ago where he had that breakout season, if he actually kicked accurately, he probably would have been All-Australian. He's come back to the field since then.
Have you got a closing word on the spin cycle there, Kane?
I just want to know, Collingwood are they more in a holding pattern, do you reckon, Sam? Like, I keep hearing salary cap pressure, which is almost hard to believe. But what will their priorities be? Obviously, to get enough points for Dacos, but is that about it? Just pretty
I think
stable
so.
there?
I think it's a stagnated sort of a year. That's probably a better term not the greatest term to use, but they do have to make up significant points on Nick Dacos or they go into deficit for next year. Graham Wright did term it a hangover of sorts from the salary cap from last year, so I think it's more of a consolidation year. That's probably the word I'm looking at on the player movement front for Collingwood.
Do you so we're excluding Lepper from this conversation, Kane, do you think there's a case to trade one asset which would make them materially weaker next year for the long term?
So that would be a Maynard, a De Goey, a Grundy type.
Yeah. Is there a case for that?
I just liked De Goey's probably the obvious one, but I liked what I saw, and to see now a bit freer off the field, perhaps with those issues seemingly going away, and seeing what Jake Stringer did. I think De Goey is capable of that. So he could be one that if you did trade could come back to get you. So maybe not. I'm probably going in as they were and hoping for some improvement from beyond and hoping that your best players like Moore and these guys come through with a full season with injury.
All right.